what's the biggest danger that we confront now? And I think the clearest immediate danger is probably this phony war, this proxy war in the Ukraine. But then after that, it's the potential collapse of the financial markets, followed by a collapse of the economy, followed by social upheaval here in the U.S., and this could go on all over the world.
You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
And welcome. You are listening to watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz. Well, a lot going on in the world, to put it mildly, to put it charitably. But let's try to get a perspective on what exactly is going on. Is this the end of Western civilization as we know it? Our good friend Doug Casey is with us from the International Man. Doug, it's always great to have you on the show. So what's going on here? Are we going to survive this, or we're just useless eaters that they want to get rid of so they can implement their grand plan?
Well, you know, George Carlin was always my favorite comedian. And
mine too.
I don't think we have to worry. The earth is going to survive, and it's just going to shake off these problems like a dog after it has a bath. So, but I always like to look at the bright side. If we take a gloomier view, it's entirely possible that we could be moving towards World War III. And that is really, really a scary prospect. I mean, it could destroy civilization as we know it. And the fault would lie about 100%, in my opinion, with Washington, D.C.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. These policies that we've followed post-World War II. I mean, even, look, you could go back to the Civil War. We all know that. But just in the so-called modern era, from World War I on, basically everything that's gone wrong in the world is to some extent Washington, D.C.'s fault, don't you think?
I do think that, actually. And it's really a pity, because America used to stand for something. America used to be an exceptional country, and it was exceptional because it was the only country in the world's history that was actually founded on the principles of individual freedom and, the values that were put across in the Constitution: freedom of speech, freedom of thought, free markets. That's all being washed away at this point.
Yeah, well, it looks like basically every institution, and it's not just the United States here. I think this is a global phenomena. You look what's happening in China with everything there, and I watch these videos of stuff falling apart in China. These so-called tofu dreg projects, where they're just like cutting corners. Even though they know that the highway is going to collapse and thousands of people will be killed, they just cut corners. I mean, it's corruption. I mean, America certainly doesn't have a monopoly on corruption, does it?
No, it doesn't. And China is interesting because I lived in Hong Kong for, goodness, how long did I live there? For about 15 years on and off. And when I first went to mainland China, to Beijing, when we landed in Beijing airport, it was just somewhat bigger than the little airport in Aspen, Colorado. When we took a car into downtown Beijing, it was on a 2-lane road, and there were still farmers with oxes plowing the fields next to it.
Yeah.
I mean, the progress that China has made is unbelievable. It's incredible. That's on the bright side. But at the same time, since a lot of it, not all of it, has been state directed, they've made some huge misallocations of capital, stupid misallocations of capital for political reasons. So I'm not terribly optimistic about China over the next 10 years, certainly, but I'm not optimistic about any place in the world for the next 10 years. This
Is
is
there an
going to be a
island?
rough decade.
Is there an island we can all escape to? The land of, fantasy island, paradise, where we get away from all the foibles and the insanity of government? I mean, we're living in a Kafka-esque world right now, Doug.
Well, talking about islands, one guy that you might want to have on your show is Vít Jalajka, who founded Liberland. Have you explored that at all?
No, not yet, but I heard some mention of it. Yeah,
it's an island in the Danube River between Croatia and Serbia, and because of just the way these things work, neither Croatia nor Serbia claims it for reasons of their own. So Vít staked a flag there about, oh goodness, how long ago? 10 years ago. And he's trying to get it recognized as a country, get people to live there. And so who knows? Anything can happen from that point of view. But what other islands might be interesting to go to and stake out? Well, certainly not Haiti.
no.
I mean, that's going to become the 51st state of the Union over the next few years if they don't watch out.
Haiti's an issue that another one of the United States screw-ups, going back to the 1800s. In fact, most of Latin America, much of it in Central America, and everything that's going wrong there now is directly traceable to American imperialism, invasions that took place, many invasions, during Smedley Butler's time, and the inability of the U.S. to ever really look for a meaningful solution. They're always looking for the next strong man who would just basically let us pick our fruit trees, banana republics.
Yeah. The people in Washington just can't leave things alone. And I don't think that's ever going to change. And the reason I say that is because you got two kinds of people in the world. People that like to create things and move atoms around and make things and manipulate physical reality, and people that like to move people around and manipulate people. And those are the kind that always go to Washington, because that's where you can get control of the instrument of the state, where they can force people to do that. So, and it's gotten worse. I mean, it really has. Washington, and I used to live there for, goodness, 20 years.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it really is a cesspool that draws that kind of person, the way Las Vegas draws gamblers and the way Hollywood draws wannabe stars. Washington draws just not the best and the brightest, but the scum of the earth.
Sociopathic. It's a magnet. It's a sociopathic magnet, because, hey, you're a sociopath. What's better than getting to screw with people's heads and make them do things they don't want to do? Or better yet, get them to do things that you want them to do that they don't even know why they're doing them.
Yeah.
It's a dream.
Yeah, it really is. And, I'm trying to think, what's the biggest danger that we confront now? And I think the clearest immediate danger is probably this phony war, this proxy war in the Ukraine. But then after that, it's the potential collapse of the financial markets, followed by a collapse of the economy, followed by social upheaval here in the U.S. And this could go on all over the world. It's a worrisome thought.
Yeah. Well, the founding fathers, particularly Hamilton, their major fear was societal breakdown and chaos. And I guess back then, the perception was that the social order, was quite fragile, and that government needed to reinforce the social order largely by staying out of things that it didn't know what it was doing and didn't know how to do. And really, I think the perception now, mistakenly, among many of you out there, is that the social order civilization is firmly ensconced. But you only have to go to our rapidly declining urban centers to see that that they're going rogue, they're going native in these places like Chicago, Baltimore, and you know the list as well as I do. It's shocking that like things like shoplifting has been normalized, and the criminals, truly the inmates are running the asylum.
Well, I did an article, now that you mentioned that, at internationalman.com just yesterday on the state of U.S. cities. And the thing is that ever since the dawn of history, cities have been the centers of civilization. It's where you can have comfort and safety and trade. Cities make civilization possible. And the way that American cities are collapsing, and they really are, they're not centers of production of new wealth anymore, but they're cesspools where you put inventories of people. And those people don't seem to be capable of anything but consuming stuff that's given to them and voting. So the nature of cities has changed. And it's very disturbing for the prospects of civilization itself. I sometimes wonder if we couldn't have a new dark age with supply chains as tenuous and as complicated as they are. You break a few of them, and the others break, and then others break. And it's hard to put these things back together again, because a lot of people in the West, well, everywhere, frankly, at this point, don't know how to make stuff anymore. All they know how to do is sit in front of their computers all day and manipulate digits, which is nice. That's great. Love computers, or hate them anyway. Yeah. But it could get scary, I think.
Hey, I was thinking about this, like, we grew up, we learned how to change a tire. All right, cars were a lot less complicated. You could kind of screw around with the carburetor, with the, if the car wouldn't start, you could actually maybe get it to start with a set of jumper cables.
You could figure it out. Look if the distributor was working and so forth, right?
You can't do that anymore. No. I can't do it. Well, I have an EV, but that's neither here nor there. The fact is, the modern vehicle, it's basically a brick when it stops working, and then the number of people who can actually get these cars to work is declining, because that's a dirty job, and nobody wants to do these dirty jobs. I mean, I was like taking something apart in my house to get my air conditioner to work, and because I just didn't feel like calling somebody. So I messed around with some wires. Air conditioners are still pretty simple, at least the ones I have, and I actually got it working. But, the number of things that you can actually fix in your house nowadays is a very finite number of things. You could maybe screw in a couple of light bulbs, and if they're Wi-Fi light bulbs, you could spend an hour trying to get them to work on the network. But outside of that, there's really not much you're capable of producing or fixing in your own home.
Yeah, you're right. And if something breaks, generally, you don't even try to fix it. You're supposed to replace it. But the fact of the matter is that most of those replacement parts come from China, not here in the U.S.
Yeah, it's becoming an untenable form of existence here on so many levels. And then yet, you do have your Elon Musks of the world, whatever people might think about him. Hey, the guy owns space now. Basically, he dominates space. And, the things like the internet, being able to go all over the world now, regardless of infrastructure and wires, So we are moving ahead on certain fronts here as well, but complexity and the ability of the human mind to keep up with it, to manage it, I think we're like in a losing battle, Doug.
Yeah, we'll just have to see what happens. My solution to the problems of the world is more freedom and a free market. You talked about useless mouths earlier. Most of those useless mouths work for the state. They're very well paid to
overpaid.
Their president, their fellow citizens, and it seems to me that I don't know what the percentage would be. 90% at least of the U.S. government, certainly, and local governments that are no better, could be abolished. The argument that I make is that since government is force, since government is coercion, that's the nature of it. It's not we, the people, getting together. We should really have nothing but a police force to protect you domestically, a military to protect you from foreign threats, and a court system to adjudicate disputes without resorting to force. And the rest of the government, I think, is redundant and useless and counterproductive and extremely costly to the average guy. I mean, all of our biggest expenses are taxes to feed the beast.
Yeah, the feed the beast that refuses to be tamed. And yeah, like I saw a funny meme. It said, without government, who would water the roads? Because like in Florida here, they're watering the medians, but they can't seem to aim the sprinklers properly, and the street gets watered, So without government, but if it was private and you look, hey, we're wasting hundreds of thousands of dollars a year watering asphalt, you'd figure out a way to fix it. But there's no incentive for the government to stop watering the streets.
Yeah, no, there's not. And it's true everywhere. Frankly, it's that, before the Soviet Union collapsed, which was a wonderful thing that it just collapsed peaceably. It's that, Russians used to ask, well, if we didn't have our government, who'd make our shoes? Like playing got you. Who'd make our cars?
Yeah.
Like haven't thought of that. Yeah. And that's pretty much the way the Americans think when it comes to the various things that governments do today.
So true.
Incidentally, I think Russia gets a very bad rap because that country has totally reformed since the collapse of the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
There are more communists in American universities than there probably are in all of Russia today. The average Russian has kind of learned his lesson at this point. Mm-hmm. The old people, whatever you grew up with, you like, but the young people are not that way at all. And people don't realize that the top tax rate in Russia is only 12%.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's true.
It's funny that I've talked to a number of people. I've been to the Soviet Union and Russia over the years, at least a half a dozen times, and I've been all over the place, starting when it was the Soviet Union and as it transformed into Russia. And it's a very it's interesting. It's still a dysfunctional country. Once you get out of Leningrad and Moscow, or I should say St. Petersburg and Moscow, it's still pretty backward, pretty primitive. Not a lot of comforts. But friends I have that live there now, Westerners, tell me that from day to day, it's pleasant, it's free, nobody bothers you. So this is not, and the average American has been convinced that it's still Mordor, it's still the Soviet Union. It's not.
Yeah, this is very true. It is different, but hey, Putin's not my favorite dictator. But I guess if the trains run on time, then people are happy and they move on. So Hey, energy. We have this insane energy policy emanating from the capitals of the world that looks like it's aimed at shutting down sustainable energy. To me, sustainable energy is hydrocarbons. It's been sustaining a modern civilization for over 100 years, and we're trading it for which I think I'm not against wind and solar and all that, but they just don't seem ready for prime time in a lot of cases. And we're crowding out the energy system that works for the energy system of the future that very well might not work. I mean, isn't that the definition of insanity? We can't have modern life without energy. It just can't exist.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I too have nothing against wind and solar. They're fine for special applications in special places. But as mass power for an industrial civilization, it's actually crazy to try to do that. And to spend hundreds of billions, it's going to be trillions of dollars to build these things, which lose money, which is to say, destroy capital. And the more you do it, the less reliable the grid becomes. It's actually crazy. So once again, this is the kind of people that get into the state that do these crazy things. The answer, from a technological point of view, is nuclear power, which is by far the safest, the cleanest, and the cheapest form of mass power generation. And the hysteria that we've had against nuclear power for many years, I guess it started with the hippies, evolved into the greenies. We shouldn't be, there are about 50 new technologies for small, self-contained, variable nuclear plants, safe, cheap. There could be hundreds of them, thousands of them around the U.S. that could actually fulfill the promise of nuclear power. It'll be almost too cheap to monitor.
Yeah,
but
that's what they told us in the 60s. Nuclear power is going to be so cheap that that you won't have to, you won't have meters. It's going to be so cheap, but they managed to screw that one up, didn't they?
Well, they did. It should be that cheap, and it would be that cheap if nuclear power had not been regulated to the level that it is today. What are you doing driving an electric car? What kind do you have, incidentally?
I got a Tesla. It's a lot of fun. It's basically a supercar for under 100 grand. So,
yes, they're lightning fast. I mean, they're quite, and they handle like slot cars because the weight is very low to the ground.
And the tech, like I put that thing on FSD. It just drove me home. 15 minutes before this interview. Basically, I had to intercede once because it wanted to go in the wrong lane. And just the brilliance of it, it's really incredible.
No, I'm all for it. I like, I've been a car guy my whole life. I'm all for these electric vehicles, but you're taking some risks. If the grid goes down, that Tesla will turn into a brick.
Yeah. I have a generator, but that is super, super expensive. So yeah, I mean, there's a risk, but it's been a lot of fun. I have to say, the most fun car I ever had. In so many ways, like the greatest car ever made, as long as you don't have issues, right?
Yes. Yeah. No, I mean, a lot of advantages, not many moving parts, and it's quiet. And no, they really are nice. It's just, I understand. I can't confirm this, but there's legislation to prohibit Americans from buying small generators. Have you heard that? Or is that just...
yeah. Yeah, well, they got to kill all the fun. Yeah, they're contemplating it. The amount of pollution that a generator puts out, especially if it runs on propane, is nil. Natural gas is, of all the hydrocarbons, by far the safest, cleanest burning, most efficient, energy efficient. But, leave it to these sociopaths to get on the bandwagon, right?
Yeah, it is. And incidentally, right now, natural gas is, in real terms, at about the lowest level in history. Contracts are trading at around $2.50 per 1,000 MCF. And it's very, very cheap relative to everything, including its past existence. So I've been buying natural gas producers, and some of them, especially in Canada, in Alberta, are yielding close to 10% in dividends. And I think those dividends will only go up with natural gas prices in the future. So that's kind of an interesting area in an otherwise overpriced stock market, I think.
Yeah, a lot of that. All right. Well, hey, Doug, really appreciate you coming on, sharing your insights on today's malaise with us. And the best place to find you is internationalman.com.
And also on YouTube. I guess that's where we are right now, isn't it?
Yes, we will be shortly. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm also on Doug Casey's Take on YouTube. And I always like to plug my 3 novels. I've written a lot of books, but I like to mention the novels Speculator, Drug Lord, and Assassin, which is another story, and they're all good reads. So
absolutely. I've read a couple of them. All right. Thanks so much, Doug. Hey, if you've got a question for Doug, myself, shoot me an email, kl@kerrylutz.com. And the link to Doug's site and his YouTube channel is on the show notes to this interview on financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Make sure you sign up for your free newsletter. Doug, always a pleasure. Keep up the great work. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Terry.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.